Maybe one of this.
Okay, so we'll do take two. We'll start the meeting now at 7:46. So welcome to everyone. This is our November 13th, 2021 meeting of the Lackawanna Cutoff Historical Committee. So tonight we're going to go over a couple of items here. I have a little bit of an update on the Greendell Station. Chuck is going to give us an update on some of our projects on the cutoff, the Andover Tunnel, and west of Andover with the infrastructure bill. And then Chuck is going to continue. Ironically, before I chose this date, I failed to realize that November 13th was the day of an Amtrak special back in 1979. And so Chuck will be presenting on that Amtrak special. And then we'll have some Q&A at the end if anybody has any questions. All right, so the lease, technically it's phrased as a license by the state, the NJDOT. It's not a lease. We've seen this and we signed it back in January, which was 11 months ago now, and there was one little minor error in their original copy, which we fixed in September. And the gentleman who I've been in contact with actually came to the station back over the summer when we had our marker dedication, and he fixed the error. We signed it again, and this was what 3 months ago now. So I contacted Senator Arrojo's office. They've been aware of everything, and they are looking into it. They have a contact, and they've been kind of behind the scenes with their NJDOT contact. So they're looking at it right now. Because quite honestly, I don't think it shouldn't take that long for two people to sign it at the DOT. So that's where we're at as of November 2021. We're just waiting on 2 people to sign it. The Attorney General of the state of New Jersey is one of them, and the NJDOT, one of the head people there. So why is it taking so long? We get asked this question all the time, and it comes down to ownership of the station. NJDOT owns it, as they own the entire right of way, the railroad from Port Morris all the way to the Delaware River. And our station is a little tiny part of that right of way. So basically, to make it simple to understand, it's basically like subletting or subleasing a room in a house. All right. They would like to sell off or lease off the whole thing with the buildings included, but we're kind of a pest to them now because we just want the little tiny building in Greendell, and they can keep the rest of it, or will keep the rest of it. Although Amtrak looks like it's going to get west of Andover, and I'll let Chuck talk about that later. But that's what's holding it up. It's a very complicated lease to them anyway, and I don't think the DOT has ever dealt with anything like this. So, but we've made a lot of progress in a couple of years, and we do have hopes that these 2 people will sign it and we'll be off and running. Does anybody have any questions about that, about the lease or anything pertaining to the lease or the station itself? But that's why it's taking so long. It's a very unique situation for DOT. They don't have anything like it. And quite honestly, they'd rather probably sell it to a group or, do something along those lines. And when I filled out the lease, I had an interview, and they wanted to make sure we weren't profiting off of it. They have all these legal loopholes. So, yeah. But that's where we're at now, and hopefully we'll have some resolution to this very shortly. If we have no questions, we can move on to the next.
One silly question, and I think you might have touched base on that if everything from west of Port Morris or west of Andover goes to Amtrak, what happens to this lease?
But I actually, I've asked my contact that question this week last week after the bill was passed, and he was trying to find out an answer on that. But I don't believe, and me, I don't know, we don't have the answer, because we don't think Amtrak's not stopping in Greendell. I would assume it's just gonna, the line itself would just transfer over and they could leave us alone there, but I don't have an answer right now on that. It's a good question.
Mm.
Even if New Jersey Transit were to have gone to, like, let's say Blairstown, we don't think they were gonna use it, but they did have part of it dubbed as a maintenance away facility, but do they need the whole property? Do they need the station? So we don't have any options, although it did say in the lease that we would have to turn it over if, if somebody did need it in the future, which, who knows when that is. But yeah, I don't have an answer for that question right now. We're waiting. I'm awaiting an answer on that too. So I like to be as transparent as I can be, but we did ask that same question, so I don't have an answer right now. Okay, Chuck, we can move on to the next slide.
Okay.
So we did have some work done by one of our members recently, and he did clear out a lot of the land back to the tower area in the late summer. I guess this was right. Chuck, was this before the hurricane hit, the whatever that big flooding rain was? Was that before or after this? I'm trying to think now. I think it might have been before.
Yeah, I
Late
think so.
summer in August.
Yeah, just before.
And so the area looks really nice now. There's the siding, the freight siding there. You can hit the next slide there, Chuck. We have the old ice house over there off to the side, which is now visible, and the other structures that were on the property, the freight house, it's all visible now. The artifacts that are there. And once the lease of the station is not going to include this area initially, but we're kind of babysitting that area now too. You can move on, Chuck, to the next one. And so it is visible to the tower, and our guy who completed the work, I remember he planted grass seed down as well. So the shrub should not grow back. It should be open for hopefully a long time now. And you can see it probably from the road if you look closely, or in the winter time, people can see it now from the road. And then there's a closer look at the tower there, the Greendell Tower. It's come up a couple of times as a question, are we going to restore the tower? And the answer is not initially. We're having enough trouble with the getting the station lease, let alone the tower lease. However, maybe if the maintenance away facility was put there, maybe Amtrak or New Jersey Transit would use this tower as their facility, because as we all know, New Jersey Transit likes to use former towers as offices. So, maybe in the future, this will become a future office for maintenance away crews or something, but we have no plans to do anything with this right now. And again, there's just another area looking towards the station from, like, if you were walking back from the tower to the station. A lot of work was done. So, and again, this was done, we were kind of surprised when we saw this.
And I think, Keith, we're probably at the point where we're not going to expand any more out. Like we've talked about, well, where do you stop in terms of clearing? And I think we've reached that point. I don't think we're going to
Correct.
There's going to be anything else that's going to be done here.
Right. Yeah, this is pretty much as far as we're going to go, and we will not be, we're not going to be going any further with brush cutting or anything like that.
And I see Jennifer has joined us, by the way.
Okay. I think we lost the presentation there.
Are you?
I see the boxes of us.
Oh, you do?
The shared screen went off.
Oh, okay. Let me get it back. Where are you? Okay.
Yeah, so to Chuck's point, we're not gonna be, that's it with the brush cutting. We did what we needed to do with that, and there will be no need to do any more, actually. So, and I'll address what's gonna happen next momentarily here.
Yeah, as soon as I am able to bring, no. There's my,
I don't see it down there. I don't know what happened to it.
there we go.
Okay,
What happened was, it was the same story that when I tried to let Jennifer in, because I couldn't see my cursor, it also, I must have hit accidentally the, oh, shoot, I have somebody else coming in now. Not that I'm disappointed, but okay, now. Okay, now can you see it?
yes. So
Okay.
there's just another look at the station there, and you can see the tower in the background. Tried to get that in the picture there. So that's kind of what it looks like with all the, in the summertime shot now. In the winter, of course, it'll be more visible. So if anybody drives past it, that's what the scene will look like now. And we can move on to the next slide there.
Hang on again, I have to let some people in.
Okay.
Let's see. Jesus and Ryan, hang on a second. I have the same issue that I cannot see the cursor. I don't know why I cannot.
By the way, this
There we go.
station probably hasn't been this open and this clear in, I would say, 40 or 50 years. So this is the best it's looked in many years here, without the trees and the brush. Because prior to this, prior to 2001, I think that's when that bridge was torn down, the Wolf's Corner Bridge. This was hidden out of the way, and so this is probably the best it's looked in decades, I would say. Okay.
Okay. Let's see. There we go. So
The future, we're on to the future project slide here now. So like I said, we've seen the lease or license, and we are just waiting for the other parties to sign it. First thing we're going to do is we are going to have insurance for the site. The roof, we've talked to several people, and we have several options to go with the roof. We have cheaper options and we have more expensive ones, and we're going to see what happens with, I guess, when it comes to funding or fundraisers, I should say, about how to proceed with that, and then electricity as well. And then we have to, long term, we have to get water for a sprinkler system because of the coating and the fire coating and everything. So those are some of the bigger projects we're going to have to deal with. One of the minor projects is landscaping. We have one of our members who's been assisting. He may or may not be with us again next year. There's some family issues going on there, but we have a backup landscaper who lives around the corner who's helped us out before. So that'll be, we're just going to maintain the property as it is now. We're not going to go back to the old days of the growth and everything and going on in there. And we were toying around with the idea of doing a fundraiser, and then we waited with the infrastructure bill to see what was going to happen. And, with the lease, because we saw it and we had the revision, we're very close to possibly doing an online fundraiser. But the bottom line is, once we get the lease, we'll be able to go in, and do fundraising on the property. Examples of this will be a Santa at the station, which other groups do in New Jersey, other historical groups. And that's kind of like a big thing for them, with the Santa at the station, car shows, maybe a railroad memorabilia show at some point. And that'll show that we're active in the community as well. So that's some of our goals long-term. But it all really does hinge on getting this license, AKA the lease, signed, and hopefully we have some news on that. I've been saying this for years now, hopefully by the next time we meet, which sometime early next year. And that's basically where we're at with the Greendell Station. Now, does anybody have any questions on Greendell? Because I'm going to turn it over to Chuck. We've had some other news about Amtrak and a lot of that in the news. But if anybody has any questions about Greendell, I can answer them now or at the end of the meeting. If not, I'm going to turn it over to Chuck, and Chuck, you can proceed with Roseville. We have a little bit of an update on Roseville Tunnel. And then, of course, the infrastructure bill, which was passed. So I'm going to let you take over, Chuck, and maneuver on to the next slide.
Yeah, hang on a second. Let me let Jennifer in if I can. Then that'll.
Chuck, if you want to make me the co-host, I can handle the letting people in and out. Or
Yeah, how do I do that, Keith?
click on my name. I think if you go to the more option, you can make me I believe it's up there. You can make me a co-host.
Yeah, the problem is it keeps on. I keep on. Oh, there we go. Now I can do this. Say I didn't have the capability of what I can do is the more. Which one do I have to give?
All right, boys, what we working on today?
Who was that?
Yeah, that Jesus Christ guy can go, I think.
All right. Well, let me turn over control to you, and then you can do that, Keith. So I have to do that under more, is what you're saying. There, okay. Which one? I'm using share computers, sound optimized. There isn't such a choice, Keith.
Oh, you can't. Okay. All right. Well,
Yeah.
if you want to get rid of that guy, let's get rid of him.
Yeah. Let me go to the participants. Hang on a second here. No, I didn't want to report. I just want to get rid of them. Okay. He is gone. Okay, now we can proceed here. All right. All righty. Okay. So let's talk about New Jersey Transit. Now, New Jersey Transit is synonymous with Andover, and everything west of Andover is going to be, we'll talk about, will be involving Amtrak. So, well, there's good news and bad news. With New Jersey Transit, the laying of the Roseville Tunnel project continues to occur. It's been pushed back now, where the bidding process goes into, I guess it would be second quarter of next year. And then the actual start of construction would be sometime in the fall of next year, 2022. So basically, if we're lucky, a little bit less than a year from now. And that would be up to the board to approve, but that should be a pretty much a non-issue. They've also talked that since the tunnel is a 2-year project, they have said that is New Jersey Transit has said that they would be able to do the remaining track work in that time. Now, does that mean that they would be ready to go to run trains in 2024? Well, we're not sure. They have not changed their initial, well, not the initial, but the most recent, I think it was 2027. I think it had been kicked back to, I think it's gone, it keeps getting kicked back. But in terms of with Amtrak coming in, is that going to affect that? We don't know. And they've added, all of this is based on with a caveat that either COVID or unforeseen circumstances could delay this project even further. We'll just have to see how this plays out. But I think, in my opinion, we're going to have to see what Amtrak does. I think Amtrak may be the one that may be driving both projects, basically, in terms of the deadline. So I've now brought back my, hang on a second here. I brought this back, which I don't want to see again. Okay. Now talking about Amtrak, as I'm sure you're all aware, the infrastructure bill that was originally passed by the Senate back in August was just passed by the House of Representatives last Friday, a week ago. And that provides a total of $66 billion for what I'll call rail-related projects, including $22 billion, which is directly earmarked for Amtrak, $6 billion for the Northeast Corridor, and $16 billion for its national network. And then another $44 billion, which is earmarked for a combination of state and federal grants to support passenger rail. And that would be funneled through, if I understand correctly, through the Department of Transportation, which would go to Amtrak, the Federal Transit Administration. And some of this would be going to like a New Jersey Transit or SEPTA or entities like that. And then there would be a grade crossing elimination program that would be handled through the FRA, the Federal Railroad Administration. Now, the kicker in all this is that Amtrak is saying it would take a minimum of 3 years from the start to complete. And the ones we focused on are what we would call the Pennsylvania projects. Of course, Scranton and New York City, which would utilize the cutoff, Reading, Philadelphia, New York City, which basically is Reading, Philadelphia, and then but the train would continue on to New York City as a through route, and then Allentown to New York City, which the latter of the three, been told that well, I'll just say it's kind of unlikely, just given what I've been hearing. Although Amtrak has it on their map and they've mentioned in their slides, so it's a bit of a poser at this point as to what's going on with Allentown. So what we can do now is break for question and answer, just because this will be before the entertainment. Any questions at this point?
There was a lot of talk on the Facebook group page about this. So if there's anything we can answer now, I mean, Chuck, I'm guessing we're going to have a lot more on this in the next 6 months, 12 months. So this is going to be an ongoing portion of our meetings going forward here.
Yeah.
How Amtrak delegates this money, and we're watching it. So,
well, President Biden is scheduled to sign the bill into law on Monday. There's also a new wrinkle which has come out, and that is there's going to be an infrastructure. I don't know if you want to call him a czar, but there's going to be an infrastructure coordinator that will be appointed by the president, who is going to be overlooking the entire, not just Amtrak, but the whole $1.2 trillion appropriation bill, or the what is basically coming out of that. So we don't know how that's going to play out, but that person presumably is going to have an enormous input, presumably at the behest of the president, to make sure that certain projects presumably are being done. We're not really clear exactly what the role of that person would be, but you would think that would be probably the thing that's going to be be near the top of the list of what their responsibilities will be. Someone just raised their hand. Feel free just to chime in. I mean, we're kind of informal here. Anybody have a question?
Well, Chuck, I think, what you're alluding to is that I don't think Norfolk Southern is really crazy about giving over any capacity from Allentown east to Amtrak. And that they're
That is
not.
part of it. I had a conversation with the couple of advocates there, and I don't know if they speak for everybody in Allentown, but what they told me was fairly disturbing from their perspective. And that is that and one of the advocates has been at it for over 30 years. So it isn't as if they started this yesterday. And what they're telling me is that they've really given up on going from Allentown to New York City for several different reasons. One of which is Norfolk Southern, although certainly if Amtrak is coming in with enough money at their disposal, they could overcome that in terms of giving Norfolk Southern what it wants. The question is, we don't know what Norfolk Southern wants, but probably it means like a second track, which probably be over 20 miles in length, in addition to, because it's the Lehigh line is one of the most heavily traveled in terms of freight operation. But anyway, I don't want to go into a lot of details talking about their particular project, but that actually the advocates are saying they're just not getting response from the local entities, not only the politicians, but also there's like a transportation commission. There are a couple of different entities that you would think, if they were going to be supportive of this, that they would be the ones who would be spearheading, and that what they're hearing, or what the type of reaction they're getting, is that there seem to be more favorable towards bus operation than they are toward rail operation. And as a result, what they've focused not so much on Allentown, New York City, which is what now Amtrak wants to do, or at least it's on their map, but rather going in towards Lansdale over the Bethlehem branch. Anyway, I don't want to get into a lot of detail about that, but that's what, even by their own admission, they think the Reading, New York City route has a much better chance than theirs. So I would say at this point, Scranton, New York City, well, is probably a political favorite, because you're talking about having serving Scranton, which is the president's hometown. Reading, which seems to maybe have had much a favorable response, and then Allentown, which appears to be not. It just doesn't seem like it's going to happen down there. That's, at least that's what I'm being told. But you're not hearing this in the press, but that's what I'm being told, sort of like I'll say behind the scenes, what they're
Chuck,
being.
you mentioned the Lehigh line. I thought they were going to go out through the Washington Secondary. Isn't that what the Amtrak had, or were they?
Well, they still have to use part of the Lehigh line if they were to do that. No, the Amtrak is proposing to go down. Well, it would serve Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton, go through Phillipsburg, but not, there would be no stop in Phillipsburg. Would go down the Lehigh Valley. It's really CNJ, which goes into the Lehigh Valley, and then you go off of the Lehigh Valley onto the CNJ. It's because the way they've moved rights of way around, that would have to happen. And then you go onto the CNJ west of High Bridge, and then you get to High Bridge, which is the end of the Operation New Jersey Transit for the Raritan Valley line, and then you'd go east from there to Newark. I think they have a stop at Somerville, but I asked them about the Washington Secondary, and they said they have not heard anything about that. So it seems like that's a New Jersey thing. That he said nobody over here, meaning over in Pennsylvania, is talking about that. He said we're not even talking about now the going to New York City. He said, but it's definitely not. There's nothing about the Washington Secondary, going through like Netcon and such. Nothing.
One of the, and Matthew, to address your question before, if or not, if when Amtrak announces what their plans are, my goal is to get a contact so I can find out how this will affect the station. So hopefully we'll have a little inside scoop in the future, coming weeks and months. And that's kind of how we got our information about Roseville. We have some inside contacts at transit. But that's my goal, is to get someone to pick their, just to tell them who we are, what we're doing, and so hopefully we'll have a contact shortly once they announce what's going on. And that's how we're going to hopefully establish a relationship with them going forward here. Any other questions before we turn it over to the presentation side of things? So Chuck, I'll let you continue, and you have an amazing presentation on Amtrak here on the cutoff from 1979. So,
Okay, so yes, it's as by pure coincidence, because I know Keith and I were talking before. This wasn't, it just happened this way. But today is the 42nd anniversary of the running of the so-called Pocono Mountain Special, which ran on November 13th, 1979. And just a little bit of background on the whole thing, what basically going back to that time, the last through freight on the New Jersey cutoff, also known as the Lackawanna Cutoff, had run in November of 78. So when we get into 1979, the line has been put out of service. But even before that, Conrail, and we found out about this through a couple of different sources, that Conrail was really actively discouraging customers from continuing to have service on the line, not only from between Port Morris and Slateford on the cutoff, but although there was very little there to begin with, but all the way to Binghamton. I mean, Conrail basically wanted to get rid of the whole Port Morris to Binghamton route. The Pennsylvania portion will eventually, west of Scranton, will get sold to the Delaware and Hudson. And then eventually the trackage in Pennsylvania will be preserved, but in New Jersey, it isn't such a happy thing. But in any case, in 1979, though, the very beginning in January, the Conrail closes UN Tower, which is Port Morris Tower, puts the cutoff out of service, turns over a rail, which we'll see in a slide, and basically cuts off the cutoff, if you want to put it that way. This raises a whole bunch of red flags. People kind of sense, okay, this is really bad news. This is possibly the start of the abandonment process, which it would be actually. So it was felt at the time that if a train could be run, that it would raise or might spark interest in the project, to the service. And my personal opinion, and this is really the start of the effort to both save the line and to reactivate it. So it's 42 years basically now that this, actually it's more than that, because it took a while for them to actually get this train set up. So it's really more than 42 years that this particular effort has been going on. Now, interestingly enough, a train did get approved before the Amtrak train. It would have been through the New Jersey Department of Transportation. New Jersey Transit did not exist as a rail operator until 1983. So this is before New Jersey Transit. So a train gets approved, but PennDOT says, no, you can't do that. It would be like a New Jersey train. And it was kind of a political thing. And well, as a result, that train didn't happen. Now, the reason why I showed this slide is this is my house in South Orange. And it's strange to know exactly where you were at a certain time on a certain date. At 8:30 roughly on November 13th, 1979, I am sitting on a couch facing away from this picture window, and you can see over here. I'm eating my either Rice Krispies or cornflakes. I hear a strange horn that I've never heard. I mean, I've been living in this house for over 20 years at this point, and I know every horn. Well, Mountain Station is about a quarter mile to the right here, eastbound. And I hear this strange horn. And lo and behold, a train comes out. Now this is a shot taken from 1992, but in 1979, Amtrak went down and it went past the house, and I saw this. What the heck is this? I didn't have any idea why it was there. Now you can see how close my house is. That train here, this Arrow train, is actually on track 3, which is the track that Amtrak went down. That's the far track. So you can see how close it was. But for 4 or 5 years, I had no idea why Amtrak was here. I would find out because I joined a rail fan group, and then I slowly discovered and became involved. But at this point, I had no idea why Amtrak came past my house on this morning. So talk about the Pocono Mountain special. So the train continues past my house, track 3, goes down to Milburn, goes on to track 1, and goes all the way to Denville. At Denville, the train is reversed. It has to go, they turn it around on Denville Y. And from there, it runs backwards from Dover all the way to Port Morris. And then at Port Morris, it goes directly onto the east leg of the Port Morris Y. Once again, I mentioned before about the overturned track at the junction on the cutoff, so you can't go onto the cutoff directly. The train goes on to the west leg of the Y, and then it turns around and then heads out onto the cutoff to go to Scranton. The train is restricted in speed. There's a rusty rail condition, which I was told about. Probably was good for at least 60 miles an hour, but they would have been limited because not only the rusty rail, but there were no signals. I'm told that not only had they been decommissioned, but they had also been sabotaged by Conrail, so that like they opened up signal boxes and ripped out wires and all that. So basically they destroyed the signal system. So, and we could talk about that a little bit later if you bring it up in the question. And we have a bunch of photos here. I have the photo credits: Rich Taylor, Bob Bars, Mike Wickman, who was the person who took most of the photos we're going to see now. He was actually on the train. He was an Amtrak guy. I think he was a mechanic. Tom Nemeth took a few shots. Who's this? Okay, let's get rid of. Do you know who that was?
I think it was Ryan, but I think then he got out of the group there, so he's gone.
Okay. All right, so let's go back to where we were. Okay, first shot. Now, this is the only shot I'm going to show you, which is not taken on November 13th, 1979. It's Rich Taylor's shot from July of 79. You can see track removed straight ahead and then off to the left. And we're going to get more shots of that. This is from the opposite viewpoint. This is actually from the date of the special. It's kind of a crummy day, kind of foggy-ish, a little bit of rain. Wasn't a great day, unfortunately, but you know, it is what it is. Okay, we're still at Port Morris. The tower's off to the left. The Y track, well, we'll see the train coming up the Y track, but the Y track is to the far right over here. And there you see, this is the first appearance of the train going backwards. Just so that it'll, when they do the turnaround on the Y, it will be facing in the correct direction and the engine will be up front. Okay, we're out in the Y. We're now heading, basically we'll be heading around the curve here onto the cutoff, and there's some people here. We don't have any photos from these couple of photographers, but I've never seen them. So somebody has photos of the train here on the Y at Port Morris, but never seen them. We had out on what was called the slow track off of the Y. The track in the middle is the track where the train will go on to. The track on the far right is a siding. It used to be the original westbound main on the right, but from 1959, it was torn out. and with a few miles were left here as a siding. So actually we'll be going out into the, I'll call it the middle track here. Now we're going to see a reverse view, and it's a Bob Barr shot of the train. He must have been just out of view when the previous photograph was taken, and the train is just coming off of the Y from Port Morris, and now, of course, the locomotive is up front. Train made a stop on the Peak West Fill, and probably the kingpin who made this whole trip possible is in the middle here. This is Bill Herkner. He actually had arranged for the first train, and then it was the Pennsylvania people who turned it down, and then he was able to get Amtrak to come in. Okay, we've just come off of the Peak West Fill. We enter onto the, well, this is East Greendell, and Greendell siding is to the right, and the train will continue on up towards the station. The signal is not operational. It looks like there's some aspect there, but it's not operational. The tower, you can see the siding to the right, the main in the middle, and the whatever you would call that, the team track or the siding off into the back of the station was still there in those days. And a small group of photographers are here taking shots at the station, which looked kind of shabby in those days. You can see a few things that are not there anymore. The overhead bridge for Wolf's Corner Road, 611. The signal bridge that was taken down. And of course the station, which would undergo a restoration by Mr. Turco, and which we inherited to some extent, and which we're trying to keep it up as long as we can. And then, you know, hopefully when we get the lease, we can do a lot more, I'll call serious work on the station. And there's a reverse view from one of those photographers, which happened to be Tom Nemeth, who was chasing the train. Johnsonburg, just a few miles west of Greendale. What remains of the station is at the right. All that will be rebuilt by Mr. Turco again, although it is now completely gone. The Seal Test, creamery is basically a shell at this point, and that would be torn down. Blairstown, at this point, a radio station, had been radio station since about 70 or 71. The Erie Lackawanna sold it off after the last train stopped here in the very beginning of 1970. It's a shame that it was such a crummy day, because from this perspective, you could see into the valley behind the station. The station is on a really nice spot. It sits way up, so you can get a view around the area. Maybe with the trees up, it maybe not as easy, but unfortunately, because it's so foggy, it's just not a really good day. Paulinskill Viaduct. First two viaducts will go over here. And the Delaware River Viaduct. Those two billboards were there for a number of years, but those are gone now. Go around the curve. Well, before we go around the curve, a shot off of the viaduct looking towards the Delaware water gap, and then a shot, kind of a classic shot of the train on the bridge by Tom Nemeth. Okay, we get to Slateford Junction, Slateford Tower. And so another, I think this is Tom Nemeth again, shot there. The old road to the right, trains on the cutoff. You know, a classic spot for shots. The bridge on which the photographer is standing no longer exists. It's a filled-in roadway. There was supposed to be funding in the infrastructure bill specifically for this bridge. We'll see. Hopefully that, I think it did survive. So that's a separate project that has to be undertaken to replace this particular bridge. It's the only obstruction, amazingly enough, on the entire cutoff of where there's a physical barrier. Fortunately, all the other bridges and everything else were preserved.
The rail goes into the fill.
Yes,
They left the rail.
there's actually rail underneath the fill. I think it's buried in there. This is Point of Gap in the Delaware Water Gap, and Route 80 is on the opposite side of the Delaware River here. This is a site of several spectacular derailments because of the 40 mile an hour curve as we go into it. The cement cars are like almost off to the left. If you go straight through that 45 mile an hour speed sign on 611 there, that's about approximately where maybe a little bit to the left of that would be where the cement cars are. The 48 Cal and Jetty derailment also occurred there. I think Steamtown actually derailed here, although it was like a very low speed type of thing. The train just kind of fell off of the track in a sense. It was not a major derailment. It wasn't something that actually, but it was an issue, obviously.
It was a major fire in the 70s, right? The EL, didn't they have a major wreck there?
Yeah, I'm trying to think where that was, if that was at the same curve or not. It might have been.
And ironically, the engineer from the CNJ just retired this summer. He was the engineer on the Raritan Valley line, and they brought the heritage unit down there. I read something that he was on that train actually.
Really? Okay.
He was running freight in the 70s. So he had a long career.
I mean, I don't remember if it was a track condition or if it was like the sway of the cars, because of this the curvature in this area here, because we get a curve to the left and the curve to the right. They found that they had this, if the trains were between a certain speed, I don't want to say like 22 to 28 miles an hour or something like that, there was an increased risk of derailment. So they either had to go slower than that or faster than that. Had something to do with harmonic motion or something like that, because the trains the cars will start swaying, and as a result you get cars like tipping over type of thing. I don't know if it was really for that particular derailment, but I know that has been discussed about this particular curve as it relates to freight. Although freight is not an issue, the Delaware Lackawanna doesn't use this. The reactivated line's not going to use this for freight. So, but in any case, back in the day, it was particularly it was an issue. Okay, a train comes into East Stroudsburg. This is the largest group I think we see of any set of photographers. The signal system is operational over here. You can see the signals are lit. And we'll get a view of the train parked at East Stroudsburg, stopped for a little bit. Then it will continue on. This is, I think, the one and only shot that Jim Boyd got, the famous photographer for Railfan and Railroad magazine. It was questionable whether the train was actually going to run. And what happened was that he had not heard that it was officially going to run. And when it did run, he scurried out to get a photo, but his plan originally was to get a shot on top of the Paulinskill Viaduct, which he missed because he had not heard that the actual train was that the rumor was true, so to speak. Toby Hanna. This would be a stop for Amtrak, by the way, and so would East Stroudsburg, and so would Blairstown. Naog Tunnel, as we are just a couple of miles east of Scranton. Speaking of which, here's Scranton coming up the the station became a Hilton and then became a Radisson. I've lost track of what it is now, but is it still Radisson? I'm not sure.
I
But it's
believe
been
it,
sorry?
I believe it is. I
It
believe
is,
it is.
okay. It's gone through a couple of hands, but it was turned into a hotel. It was a office building for the Lackawanna. There we go. And those Bush train sheds off there, they're still there. They're underneath. I think they're part of the bar area. That's part of the restaurant. View of the train stopped at the station. This would not be the station for Amtrak. There's an intermodal station, which is down by Bridge 60, which you'll see here. I think it would be just off on the right in this grassy area here is where the intermodal station is now. And you see the red signal at Bridge 60. And this train will not double back, but will continue down. And I think it goes south. I don't know the exact routing, but it'll go south from the Hyde Park Y here, because there's a Y track up the either you go to Binghamton or you go south like to Northumberland, or down that way. And it so happens that November is also the anniversary month for the last run of the Phoebe Snow, the 27th, as it turns out. It'll be 55 years for the last run of the Phoebe Snow on the 27th of November. And so there's another just FYI, which is coincidence as well. Here's the map of the stations that Amtrak is proposing for Scranton service: Newark, Summit, Morristown, Dover, Blairstown, East Stroudsburg, Mount Pocono, Tobyhanna, and Scranton. You can also see the Allentown and Reading projects as well are shown here. And you can see about what the proposals are. They once again, Amtrak has grouped them as a group of three: Scranton, New York City, 3 daily round trips, which means a total of 6 trains a day. And they're estimating a time of 3:25 for the whole trip. And they have some interesting type of aggregate type of estimations of the number of riders for all 3 services, annual economic impact, economic activity from the capital investments. They're saying 2.7 billion for the 3 projects collectively. So that's a pretty big chunk of change, to say the least. And this is where they mentioned the 3 years estimated minimum time to start service. And I throw this in. This is Mountain because I mentioned Mountain Station in my, from my house. This is Mountain Station. This is Amtrak. Gosh, who did this? It's right on the tip of my tongue. Jason White, I believe it is, did this, and Amtrak coming through, going down the Morristown line. We'll see if this when this happens. That's it. Any questions?
Great presentation.
No, thank you.
Chuck, what was the speed limit on that Amtrak, the special that ran? Because you said people were chasing that thing. It must have been going less than what, 20 miles an hour?
Or? I've only talked to one person who was on it. He said that I don't think they exceeded 40.
Okay.
You see, the thing is, in addition to the rusty rail condition that would have restricted the speed of the train, it was also dark territory, which would be 49 miles an hour. I think that's the maximum to be allowed.
Right. Yeah, and they had to stop at every interlocking probably, and
Well, the only
Greendell. East.
well, here's the thing. I don't know if they did a high rail trip to make sure that there weren't trees down on the right of way, or was there an open switch? all that kind of thing where they could have been comfortable with letting the train run at close to track speed. So I'm pretty sure you're probably right. I don't know if it was that slow, but I don't believe they made it up to 40. I heard like 40 was the maximum. I don't know if that's true. But yeah, it was definitely, they were definitely restricted for, believe me, Conrail didn't want this to happen under any circumstance, so they did nothing to help. Not that they could have run trains up and down it to get rid of the rusty rail, but I don't even know if there was any kind of advanced type of protection where you would have had like a high rail trip just to make sure there wasn't anything bad that, like broken rail or whatever, something that could have been really a disastrous type of thing.
Well, do we
No.
don't have any more questions?
Yeah, about
I think-
anything. Doesn't have to be about the
Yeah,
presentation.
just final call for any questions.